It all begins with the conversation of the aristocrats that today His Majesty looked at the prince's crown in a completely different way. Aristocrats also think that the king will never cause problems to his child because the crown prince is the heir to the Upit Empire. The women also say that since the last appearance of the prince, he has grown a lot. Even Queen Eliza came to see the crown of the prince. The heroine hears all the conversations of aristocrats and cannot believe that this world is from a novel she read. Also, the truck that hit the heroine was probably a reincarnation truck. The girl is very happy that she was reborn. Now she will say goodbye to her sad past life. It seems that the cat that the heroine saved before her death brought good luck. Regardless of which character the heroine was reborn into, because she knows the entire plot of the novel, the girl is also sure that this life will be much happier than the last. The girl wonders who she was reborn into, perhaps a beautiful thief or a daughter of the royal family. The royal family would make life easier for the heroine, but being a pretty country girl is also not bad because all this can make for a good romance. The girl thinks that her past life was difficult, but this time she will do everything to make her new life happy. After these thoughts, a hand reaches out to the heroine. When the hand took the girl, she did not understand how someone could so easily lift her into the air. The girl wanted to say at least one word, but she only meowed. Then the heroine realized that she had turned into a cat. The heroine thinks that she should have been reborn as a thief or a king's daughter. But she was not even able to transform into a human being, only transformed into a small cat. The girl thinks that in the modern world, all people love cats. But in the novel that the heroine was reading, everything is the opposite. The novel of souls taken by darkness in the novel describes how the heroine was possessed by the hero and that the novel gives the reader both good and bad emotions. In the novel Upit, a large empire on the continent and the king of the empire, Gunther Reinhardt, is the main character of the novel. After the creation of the empire, a prediction for the future was received, which said that cursed cats would lead the empire to destruction. Frightened inhabitants of the empire looked for cats and simply killed them. Many years have passed since that time, and there was not a single cat in the empire, so the empire lived on. The heroine thinks that if she is reincarnated into a cat, then it is the end of her life. In the Upit Empire, children were taught that cats are monsters, and that if a person sees a cat, they must kill it on the spot. The frightened heroine looks at the boy and wonders if he will kill her immediately. Knights came to the boy on horses and asked what happened to His Majesty. The prince replies that nothing has happened and asks that all the knights hunt tomorrow because the king is not feeling well right now. The heroine looks at the man, and she knows who he is from the novel. In the Upit Empire, only members of the royal family have red eyes, and among them is the one who took black hair from Queen Eliza. The man who picked up the heroine is the heir to the empire who will become the next king. This is Crown Prince Killian Gunther Reinhardt. The heroine met a man who is called the most cruel tyrant who once lived in the empire. Since the prince knows about cats and that they must be killed, the heroine thinks that now the prince will just get rid of her without thinking. The heroine thinks that she did not take part in the destruction of the empire. She is just a miserable girl who saved a cat and was reborn. The girl shouts that she is a person only in the body of a cat. But the prince hears as soon as the cat meows and does not understand what the heroine wants to say. Killian thinks that now he saw the cat for the first time. The heroine is surprised and thinks that the prince must have seen cats only in picture books. Killian decides to put a small cat in his pocket. When the prince comes to the castle, the heroine thinks that instead of the garden, the prince wants to kill the cat in another place. No one will see it. Killian put the cat on the table and thinks that the cat does not look like it was described in the books. In the books, cats are described as terrible creatures with big teeth and big claws. Killian thinks that this is probably because the cat is too small. The heroine looks at the prince and thinks that Killian is right only in one thing, that cats can charm people with their beauty. The prince strokes the cat and cannot understand why all people think that cats are beautiful. The heroine is simply shocked by such a question. Killian decides to play with the cat and tells him to give a paw or turn over. The heroine follows all commands. Then the prince asks to bite his finger. Then the heroine thinks that surely His Majesty is finding a situation to kill the cat. But the heroine listens to the prince and touches the prince's finger with her nose. Killian looks at the cat and thinks that this is all strange because the cat behaves as if it understands what the prince is saying. The crown prince sits in front of a table with a lot of food and thinks that the cat is eating to feed him. The heroine thinks that the prince is not going to kill her if he only wants to feed her. Also, the heroine believes that she is simply very lucky because she is a cat that will destroy the empire. The prince now looks to be 19 years old and will most likely take the throne when Killian becomes an adult. In the novel, the action unfolds when Killian becomes king, which means that the heroine is only at the very beginning of the novel. When the prince gives milk to the heroine, she thinks that cats can get stomach aches from milk prepared for humans, but there is no choice now. The heroine tastes milk and likes the taste very much. The prince thinks that everyone thinks that cats are smart and cruel creatures, but the heroine looks so weak that she can even be accidentally broken. Killian looks at the cat and cannot understand how such a weak creature could kill people. At this time, the door to the room opens. Then the prince decides to throw the cat on the ground so that no one will see it. The heroine understands that it was necessary to hide it, but it was better to immediately put it in a pocket than to throw it from the table. A girl comes to the prince and says that she was told by the servants that the prince really liked the food she prepared. Therefore, the girl came personally to thank the prince for such a nice compliment, and the girl was very worried, thinking that the prince had lost his appetite. The heroine remembered that girl with a pleasant and soft voice who always asks to prepare food for the prince. But in reality, the evil Countess Catherine Harmon Gisela will go to any lengths for power and to fulfill her wishes. She seduced the king's father Killian and became the queen. The 20-year-old girl received Gisela's castle from the king. The main characters in the novel had a hard time fighting Catherine because she is smart and has a lot of power. Also, today's dish is lamb with wine sauce from the Kingdom of Bordeaux, and this is all just the beginning of the Countess's plan. The plan was that the dish was prepared with the potion that was used for the king, and now the Countess added the same potion to Killian's food. And as soon as the prince is poisoned with potions, Catherine will make the prince into a doll that the Countess can control. Catherine tells the prince that she always feels bad when the prince eats alone, so Catherine wanted to see if the prince actually eats well. Killian asks that after he eats everything, Catherine will stop this stupid conversation. The Countess says that she is only following the king's order because the king ordered to see if the crown prince eats well. The heroine feels that Killian wants to eat the food prepared by the Countess. In the prince's pocket, the heroine begins to scratch her pocket because she has no choice but to prevent the prince from eating the food. Killian puts his hand in his pocket to calm the cat. The heroine thinks that she would not like to scratch the prince's hand, but there is no other choice. The cat scratches the prince's hand to prevent him from eating because his mind will be clouded. After being wounded, the prince tells the Countess to stop all the games because the king won't care how his son eats, and besides, Killian isn't hungry right now. Kenton says that the prince probably feels very bad that he refuses to eat. Then the Countess decides to leave the room. When the prince pulls the heroine out of his pocket, he shows the wound she made. The heroine doesn't know what to do with her because she can't do anything in the cat's body, and she is sure that the prince will definitely not feel sorry for the cat. Then the heroine in the body of a cat will try to say that she did not want to hurt the prince, but only wanted to help. But at some point the heroine remembered that the prince did not understand her. Then she concluded that this was the end. The girl thinks that she had better let the prince eat the food and think how to escape from the castle. But only then does the heroine think that she cannot be so heartless and watch someone lose their mind because of a potion. In the original story of the novel, the prince was already addicted to the potion, but now you can help the prince so that in the future he does not eat food prepared by the Countess. Killian pats the heroine and says that she probably scratched because he put her in his pocket, but now she can remain free, just don't scratch anymore. The girl is very happy that the prince decided to forgive her. When Killian was about to have dinner, the girl stopped him so that the prince would not eat the food under any circumstances. As soon as the prince raised the fork, the heroine jumps on the prince's hand to warn him. The prince does not understand what the heroine wants, but the girl stands near the food as if warning Killian not to eat it. The heroine thinks that she really needs the ability to speak a man's language. The girl tried to show the prince that if he eats a piece of food, then he will die. Killian asks the heroine if she wants to tell the prince not to eat food. The heroine runs around the table and shows what food can't be eaten at this time. The prince thinks he's going crazy. Killian thinks how the cat knows all this, but judging by his behavior, if the prince eats even one dish that the cat pointed to, he will be very sick. The prince thinks that maybe the cat is endowed with some abilities, but the heroine thinks that it is all because she is in the body of a cat. But her mind is human. The heroine thinks that if she is actually a cat and not a person in a cat's body, then she will never be able to become a person. Then the girl decides that she will stay closer to the prince because he is still very kind, and the heroine will definitely invent a way to become human. The girl thinks that the charm of the white little cat is just an invincible charm, then she will use it until the prince trusts her 100%. After the cat showed its charms, the prince smiled, which greatly surprised the heroine. After a couple of minutes, the servant says that the king ordered the prince to appear in the library as soon as possible. The heroine is sitting in the prince's room and thinks that the room looks a little scary. It doesn't even look like someone lives in the room. But according to what the heroine read in the novel, the prince devoted most of his time to the academy and only very little time remained in the castle. The girl remembers how Killian ordered her to stay in the room and not go anywhere, while the prince himself went to meet the king. As soon as the prince finished talking with the king, he went to the bathroom. Killian came to the room, and he is very glad that the cat stayed in the room and did not run away. Killian is going to sleep and tells the heroine to go to bed, but not to leave the room. But the heroine notices that the prince smells very strange. Is it the smell of blood? In the original story of the novel, the king brutally ordered the prince, and perhaps this is the reason why the king called the crown prince to himself. The heroine always wondered why the main characters in romance novels were always so beautiful, and this is probably to make the novel more interesting. The heroine also thought that the story of Killian was always boring, but now that the girl has seen everything with her own eyes, it is difficult for her to accept that this is not just a story, but reality. The girl in the body of a cat touches the prince's hand and thinks what she can do to help Killian. In the middle of the night, as soon as the prince opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful girl next to him. The girl hugged him, which shocked the prince. Killian looks at the girl and thinks that the cat that was in the girl's place just disappeared. The prince thinks that he saw for the first time the cat about which so much is told in the books. Killing the cat on the spot would have been the right decision, but only the prince could not do it. Because first of all, where did the cat come from in the garden when all the cats had been killed long ago and the garden also belonged to the royal family? Also, secondly, although the cat is just an animal, the cat behaves as if it understands everything the prince says. The cat also looks so weak, but it was able to protect the prince from poisonous food. The cat waited for the prince to return from the king and also went to sleep with Killian. Then the prince thinks that no matter how dangerous cats are, Killian found the cat himself, so from now on the cat belongs only to the prince. Killian looks at the girl sleeping nearby and thinks that if the girl dared to steal the cat, the prince would never forgive her. Killian shouts at the girl to wake up. But as soon as the girl began to open her eyes, a bright light appeared in the prince's room. After that, the girl turned into a cat again. When the heroine woke up, she did not understand why the prince woke her up in the middle of the night. The cat looks at the strange face of the prince and thinks that she somehow disturbed the prince's sleep. Killian looks at the cat and asks who the cat really is. The heroine looks at the prince and thinks that she will still not be able to answer the prince. Killian approaches the cat and asks if it is really a real cat. The heroine is upset because she cannot answer the prince's questions. The girl looks at the prince and thinks that he must have been affected by some poison or simply had a bad dream due to great stress. The heroine also mentions that she read about the antidote in the novel Countess Giselle, the only one who knew about the antidote, but the Countess took this important information with her to the grave. Killian tells the heroine if she tells him the whole truth now, then the prince will not punish the cat. The heroine begins to show that she herself is a real cat. Only then does he realize that it all doesn't work and the prince can't understand anything. Killian goes to bed and thinks that there is no point in continuing to ask the cat about everything. When the prince covered the heroine with a blanket, at first she did not understand why the prince did so. After the heroine fell asleep, she turned into a girl again. Cats are creatures that destroy the kingdom of Uput, so people used all their resources to get rid of cats in the kingdom. They taught the prince this. But if you look at the cat that is now in the prince's room, even though the cat is alive, the kingdom still exists. Killian thinks that now it's all very different from what the prince heard, and the prince has never read books about cats that can turn into people. Killian thinks that maybe the story has been destroyed somewhere, and that Uput is the prince's kingdom no matter what, so the prince will not stop until he learns all the secrets of the kingdom. But now the prince must do everything so that no one finds out about the cat he found. Only Killian thinks that the most important thing is to buy clothes for a girl who can turn into a cat. Already in the morning, when the heroine woke up, she thinks that now she should sleep much more. All this is probably because she is now a cat. As soon as the heroine wanted to go see where the prince was, she noticed a ribbon on her leg that was holding her. Then the prince appeared and said that he could not allow the cat to run away so easily. Killian also says that it is better for the cat not to even think about running away. Let it eat first. The heroine begins to sniff the prince and smells the strong smell of blood. When the cat opens the prince's robe, she sees many wounds. In the kingdom, Killian is the best warrior and swordsman. But the wounds and body of the prince from aggression. But why the prince did not resist the king? The king, whom everyone respected for his strength in the original novel, suffered a lot of cruel treatment in his childhood. How can even the main character of the tragic novel endure it all? The cat begins to meow a lot, and the prince does not understand what the heroine wants to say. Perhaps she is just very worried about whether the prince's wounds hurt. Killian also says that the cat behaves very strangely. It looks like a person but considers itself a cat. Killian looks at the cat and thinks that the cat is deceiving him, or does not even know that it can turn into a person. The prince also says that they need to go buy something. When the heroine rides in a carriage and sees the castle, she is very happy that she can see such beauty with her own eyes. Killian takes the cat in his arms and tells her not to look out the window too much so that other people don't see the cat. When the prince arrived at the place, the owner of the clothing store came out and said that it was the best clothing store in the kingdom. The heroine sits in the prince's pocket and thinks whether Killian wants to buy clothes for himself, so he took the cat with him. When the prince goes through the clothes, he notices the masks. The shopkeeper says that these masks are for a masquerade ball, but the masks are still being made, and as soon as the masks are finished, they will be put up for sale. From the words of the hostess, the heroine thinks that the kingdom is probably preparing for a masquerade ball, and if the heroine is not mistaken, the prince will meet the main female character there. Killian tells the owner of the store that he wants to see the goods. Let all the people leave the store. When the people left the store, the prince tells the cat to get out of his pocket. When the heroine got out of her pocket, she notices that the store looks really expensive and the dresses in the store are very expensive and beautiful. The prince tells the cat to see which dress she likes, but the heroine does not understand what the prince wants to do with women's clothes. Killian looks at the cat and says that it will be a gift, but the heroine does not understand who this gift is for. Now there is only one woman in the prince's life. This is Countess Giselle, and does he want to take a gift for the woman who poisons the prince's food? The heroine looks at all these beautiful dresses and thinks whether the prince wants to give something so beautiful to the countess. Even if the countess is really very beautiful, that any man would fall in love at first sight, even if the age difference is only 3 years. But in the novel, Countess Giselle and Prince Killian should be enemies because the countess replaced the prince's mother, so they should not be on good terms. The heroine thinks that the prince probably wants to give dresses to the countess because she was cooking, but Killian doesn't even understand what Giselle was cooking for. The cat wants to try to say that it is not necessary to buy a dress for the countess, but the prince does not understand and says that they really need clothes. Killian looks at the cat and says that probably the cat is just very jealous because she thinks that all these clothes are not for her. Then the prince thinks that the cat really does not know that she turned into a person when she slept. In this case, the prince leaves the shop and thinks that it would be very nice to keep such a big secret with him. When Killian and the heroine go back to the castle, the cat notices that the prince looks as if he is hiding something. The heroine is very interested in what the prince is thinking about now. Only the heroine's thoughts interrupt the prince's words about delicious food. When the heroine tastes delicious food, she tries to ask whether or not to leave a piece for the prince. Only Killian pats the heroine on the head and answers that he does not eat sweets. The heroine thinks that if she continues to behave like this, then she will really be forever in the body of a cat. The heroine looks out the window of the carriage and thinks that they are not returning to the castle, and she wonders where the carriage is going. Killian tells the cat that when they arrive at the place, they will have to check something, but the heroine won't be hurt, so don't worry. When the heroine heard about the danger, she was a little scared. The heroine wanted to sleep after a long trip in a boat. As soon as the heroine fell asleep again, she turned back into a girl. Since the time of the last king, magic has been recognized as a power of evil and has been very severely restricted, and in such a way that even wizards themselves have been punished. But in order for the prince to find out the truth about the girl and the cat, he needs to meet the wizards in person. When the heroine woke up, she heard someone say that the head of Vincent wanted to meet the prince, and the heroine thought that they had already arrived at the place. Lands of Vincent Castle of Duke Doyson. Valon Doyson congratulates the prince, and the duke says that he could not even imagine that he would see the prince with his own eyes one day. Doyson's son, Harid, asks if the king knows that his son has come to Vincent's kingdom. The prince looks at the wizard and says, "Is it Harid?" and really wants to know. Harid says that if it is true that wizards were banished from the land of Vincent, it is all because the royal family considered that the powers of wizards are evil. But then the crown prince came to Vincent's land. It's all very suspicious. The father starts shouting at Harid and tells the prince that Harid is just still very small, so he behaves so disrespectfully. Let the prince forgive the young wizard. Killian understands why Harid doesn't like the royal family so much, but the prince has come to Vincent's lands to check on something, at which time the prince takes the cat out of his pocket and puts it on the table in front of the wizards. All wizards are shocked and say why the prince brought misfortune to the land of wizards. Killian says that he doesn't care that magic is evil. The prince just wants the wizards to know about the curse that was placed on the cat. The heroine looks at the wizard Harid and remembers that he is a young and brilliant wizard who led a rebellion about Killian, who became the next king at the end of the novel. But the meeting before the coronation of the prince is very different from what was written in the novel from this moment on. It all means that the heroine cannot know the future in advance. Harid shouts why the prince has brought evil to their lands, and if no one from the royal family can kill the cat, the wizard will. Harid takes out a dagger and says that the prince must have brought a cat to kill, then the wizard will gladly kill the cat. Only Killian takes out a sword that breaks the dagger and says who allowed the wizard to take the dagger in his hands. The duke does not understand what is happening. Then the prince says that the duke should now be more concerned about his son than about the cat. Harid shouts that in this place of magic, if the prince thinks that he pointed a sword at the wizard, there will be no consequences. Only the father shouts for the son to follow the conversation when communicating with his majesty. Then the duke asks that the prince once again forgive Harid for his attitude. Killian lowers his sword and says that the cat is the prince's property, and a person who raises a sword or a hand on a cat will be punished. The duke asks what the prince means by saying that the cat is his property. The duke also says that the message says that cats will destroy the kingdom, and how dare the crown prince say that the cat is his property. Killian says that he won't talk to the wizards for long and activates his magic that appears around the sword. The heroine looks at and remembers that this power is the hidden power of the Aura Prince. It is a kind of power that can only be mastered by masters of a high level of sword skills. But in this world, aura is considered magic and is severely punished, so masters hide their aura, and it is not often found even on the battlefield. Moreover, the place where the prince came is a land of magic that is hostile to the royal family, and the fact that Killian activated the aura here and showed everyone could be a threat to the prince in the future. But regardless of why the prince activated the aura, it all goes too far. Killian asks the wizards if they agree to help with the curse. The head wizard says that they will help the prince deal with the curse, but don't let Killian activate his aura again. The heroine looks at the magician and thinks that this situation is very different from the original plot of the novel. When the magician wanted to understand what kind of curse was on the cat, he was surprised. Killian asks if the wizard finished the wizard. Doyson answers yes, but the power on the cat is so great that no one can handle this power. The power imposed on the cat is a divine blessing. God protects this cat. The magician tells everyone that everyone knows very well that cats are animals of the devil who must be killed, but the cat that the prince brought has no curse on it, but a divine blessing. Doyson says that it is hard to believe, but probably the cat and its cat relatives were able to live to this moment only because the whole cat family was protected by God. Killian says that this means that the cat did not fall from the sky, but even the prince feels the ancient power that protects the cat, and there is a chance that the cat's parents are also somewhere. The duke asks his son to have Harid look at the cat's memories, but Harid says he didn't study magic to use it on animals. Harid's father says that he taught his son that all living creatures are equal. The wizard asks the duke to take the cat's paw in order to see the memories. The prince says that he will allow Harid to take the cat by the paw only by the tip of the paw. Harid took the tip of the cat's paw and starts watching the memories. The first memory is a large garden near the castle. The second memory that the magician saw was the great castle of the kingdom. And after that, the memories end on the prince's face. Harid is surprised that the cat has so few memories, as if she was just born. The wizard also says that in the cat's memories there is only one person, and that is the prince. Harid also says that all this can only mean that the cat has lost all its memories. The prince asks if the wizards can learn more about the divine blessing. Only the magician answers that he cannot learn the information through magic because the divine blessing blocks the magic. The prince asks the wizards to search for anything that might be related to the blessing, only Doyson says that the original books and scrolls were destroyed long ago. Killian says that he is sure that by doing a good job, they will all be able to learn something. Harid asks the prince that the reason why the prince came to the land of wizards is not only to find information about the curse. Killian says that everything is so he, as the crown prince, came to the wizards with one agreement. The prince puts the contract on the table and asks the wizards to take their time and carefully read everything written in the contract. As soon as the magicians see the emblem of the sun, the symbol of the kingdom, they ask the prince why he chose the magicians. Killian replies that the Doyson were the only wizarding lineage to serve the royal family for centuries. Therefore, the prince needs people, so he becomes the crown prince and makes an offer to the magicians of the Doyson family. Killian also says that he will rebuild the Wizarding Academy, which shocks Doyson and Harid. The previous king closed the academy to stop the future resistance of wizards, but this approach will be the best against the fight against wizards. Doyson says that the prince himself may suffer due to such a contract in the future. Only Killian answers that he will deal with the problems himself. Wizards just need to carefully train future wizards. As everyone knows, the kingdom is already on the verge of collapse, and now there are even such secrets as the cat. It will be difficult to fix everything, but the prince has already made a decision, and if the wizards trust the prince, he promises to bring success and glory to the wizards. Doyson says that agreeing to a contract for a magician is like saying goodbye to life. A magician can use magic only when he serves the master under a contract, and the more powerful the magic, the more the magician will lose his sense of self-worth. The feeling that the power of the magician is in the hands of the master only. The prince does not want to deceive the wizards that behind his contract there is some good plan, for example, the creation of a new powerful kingdom. Killian just wants to know the truth why the future prophecy will not be fulfilled and what secrets are behind the curse. Then the magician Doyson says that he will devote his life to fulfilling the prince's orders. And from this time the prince is master of the wizards, and after more than 500 years, the wizards welcome the new master. If Killian is the new wizard master, he will immediately give a new order to the wizard Harid. Harid is immediately ready to carry out the order of the new master. Only the prince throws women's dresses on the table. She asks that the magicians cast a spell so that the clothes change their appearance and shape to suit the person who wears them. Harid enchants the clothes and says that now the clothes will take the form of the person who wears them. Killian praises the wizard and says that this is all, and that the prince must return to the kingdom. Already at dinner in the room, the prince asks the cat to put on the dress that Harid has enchanted. The heroine thinks that these are clothes for people. She will not be able to put on a dress. The heroine thinks that in the body of a cat it is very pleasant to climb on cold underwear and just fall asleep, and she cannot refuse this. When the cat starts to meow, the prince realizes that the cat does not like the new dress. Crown Prince looks at the cat and says, "Let her later regret not wearing clothes." Already at night, Killian looks at the girl and thinks that she should have been dressed in a dress after all. From the time the prince turned 19, he vomited a lot of potions. If you think about the original story of the novel, then until that moment, the prince was weak and in a lot of pain. But then why does the prince look so healthy now? And does he have so much strength? Does the prince have an ability that restores his strength that the heroine does not know about? The next day, an eagle flies into the prince's window. Killian looks at the eagle and says, "Did he fly?" The heroine is surprised how the prince knows this eagle. The eagle brings the prince a letter. When Killian reads the letter, he thinks that today is also bad luck. At least he got a letter saying that she won't be able to meet, but it's better than getting nothing. Killian tells the eagle to rest because it must be very tired from flying such a long distance. Killian also says that his mother tamed an eagle and the name of the eagle is Mikio. The prince strokes the cat and says that he needs to meet with his majesty. Let the cat stay in the prince's room for now. When Killian goes to the meeting, he remembers what was written in the letter so that the son would forgive his mother for cancelling the meeting and leaving so suddenly. Because the mother had to go to the Tanessa region to recover her health. But there is nothing difficult. So let the son not worry about the mother. Because Killian is the son of the Uput kingdom, let the prince study well his duties as a future king. In the garden of the castle lies a wounded tiger. The knights say that the tiger did not want to go anywhere, even to go out. But after the shot, the tiger simply fell. The current King Adolf says that this is all very nice, a nice gift from the continent of Libar. Also, the king says that it was very fun to play with the tiger in this way. The prince looks at the wounded tiger and says, "Let the knights take the tiger because the crown prince has lost his appetite." Chief of Staff Leno comes to the king. He apologizes for interrupting the king's rest, but there is a very important message. When Leno told everything to the king, Adolf was very angry. Why magicians like Killian are calmly walking around the kingdom, this will explain everything. Killian thinks that Leno is just a proud and miserable man working for Countess Giselle, despite his position as chief of staff. The prince thinks that everyone should be surprised, so Killian says that he summoned the magicians. The king shouts why the prince summoned the wizards, to which Killian replies that he thought it better to keep the wizards around to watch over them. With the exception of the royal family, more residents ask wizards to help with illnesses or problems. That is why the prince wants to use wizards trusted by the inhabitants to win the trust and power that wizards now have. And the prince does all this for the sake of the king. The king laughs and says that his son has come up with a great idea to use wizards to raise the king's power at this time. Leno does not understand what is happening. But then Leno starts supporting the prince and the king, saying that this is all a very good idea. At this time, the Countess Giselle approaches the prince and the king and says that Leno can be free because the countess came to have a good time with the king. Adolf says that he thought that the countess was busy preparing a masquerade ball. Only Giselle answers that she heard that there was a famous black tiger near the king, but she does not understand where he is now. Killian replies that he ordered the knights to take the tiger back to the valley so the countess will look at it a second time when she is free. Adolf asks the countess how she is preparing for the masquerade ball. Giselle replies that everything is wonderful. She is trying her best. Also, the countess says that if Her Majesty were around, she would try to prepare the ball. The king says that there is no need to talk about a woman who cares more about her health than about people because one countess is enough. Giselle asks the prince if he agrees with his father's opinion, to which Killian says that he agrees. He also trusts the countess to hold the banquet. Killian looks at the king and the countess and thinks if they should be killed now. But no, the prince will kill them, slowly let the king and the countess pray for death. Already at night, the cat notices that the prince has returned to his room, but the cat also sees that the prince is not well. The heroine thinks that something happened again during the tea party, or that the countess poisoned the prince's food again. The negative effects of the potion cause severe pain and nausea. Probably the food at tea time was poisonous after all. Then the heroine thinks that in the original story, Killian began to show signs of addiction to the magic potion at the age of 19. But now the prince is 19, the most difficult moment of the prince's life. A difficult enough period to kill the father and the countess and take the throne. When the heroine notices that the prince is without strength, she thinks that this is all unfair. The prince is too young to endure such pain, but no one even noticed this. But the point is not that the prince hides his pain too well, it's just that there is not a single person in the castle who would care for the prince or help him. The heroine looks at the prince and thinks how Killian protects her in the walls of the castle. So the heroine also wants to protect the prince in all possible ways. The cat begins to put a wet cloth on the prince to bring down the temperature. The cat looks at Killian and she also wants to sleep under the blanket, but she just scattered all the pillows left by the prince when she was playing. And now the heroine has no other choice to climb on the bed, so she decides to put on pajamas after all. She also laughs and thinks that if someone saw a cat in pajamas, he would probably laugh very hard. When Killian wakes up in the morning, he cannot understand why his pajamas are wet. Also, Killian notices again a cat that turned into a person, but it was sleeping on the floor. Killian is very pleased to think that the heroine fell asleep only after she brought down the temperature of the prince. Also, the only person who took care of the prince in this cursed castle was only one heroine. Killian takes the heroine in his arms because she was sleeping on the floor. The prince decides to put the girl on the bed so that she does not get sick. The prince looks at the girl and thinks that the heroine should be thanked for taking care of the prince. That's why Killian names the heroine Renee, which means little queen, because in the castle the heroine rules the prince like a real queen, so this name fits very well. When Renee wakes up, she does not understand why she is now in bed. The prince asks if Renee slept well today. The heroine is very happy that she was given such a beautiful name, and if you think about it, the heroine did not have a name in this world, and the name that the prince gave is very beautiful. Renee begins to worry about the prince, but Killian replies that everything is fine with him, thanks to one cat who took care of him. The heroine touches the prince's forehead to see if he has a temperature. Then Killian says that as a sign of gratitude, he will reveal one secret to the heroine. The prince says that when the heroine falls asleep, she turns into a girl from such news. Renee is simply in shock. She does not even know what to say. When the prince told the whole truth to the heroine that she turns into a person and remains without clothes, Renee was very offended. Killian asks if Renee was offended that the prince saw her without clothes. The heroine thinks that of course it is. As soon as Killian wanted to pet the cat, she scratched the prince. After this, the prince says to let Renee rest because now Killian is going to go to work. Killian thinks that even though he has good reflexes, the most terrible thing that Renee can do is to scratch, and the prince looks at the cat and says, "Let Renee behave well." Renee sits in the room and thinks when the prince will return and that you shouldn't have scratched the prince, and you should apologize when he returns. At this time, the heroine hears that someone in the corridor says to look for everything that can cause problems for the prince. Also, the door to the prince's room opens. Renee thinks who can enter the prince's room without warning. Countess Giselle with the maids enters Killian's room and tells the maids to look for him quickly because the prince will not be talking with Ambassador Larvan for a long time. 334. When the prince told the whole truth to the heroine that she turns into a person and remains without clothes, Renee was very offended. Renan hid under the bed and she thinks she knows that the king loves the countess, but is the countess allowed to just break into the prince's room and scatter his things? Renee listens to what a maid says that there are rumors that the prince came to a clothing store to buy clothes for a woman. The heroine understands that they are talking about a store in which the heroine was not so long ago. Lady Anna apologizes to the countess and says what does all this have to do with the fact that His Majesty is meeting with a woman? Also, Anna thinks that it is better not to interfere in the prince's life. Only Giselle tells Anna that the countess did not allow to think that all the maids should do is to listen to orders. Then why does Anna not follow the orders of the countess? Giselle also says, does Anna think that the woman the prince is dating is from a good family? But if the woman was an aristocrat, they would meet in the castle. But the prince met in the store. This means that the woman is a simple person, not from the aristocrats. The countess orders to look for everything that will look suspicious from now on. Renee thinks that it will be very bad if she is found. When the maids looked around Killian's room, they say that they did not find anything suspicious. The countess doesn't like that the maids couldn't find anything. Then Giselle shouts that even a blind person would have done better. At this time, another maid enters the prince's room, but she asks for forgiveness because she thought there was no one in the room. Giselle asks the servant who she really is, the assistant of the prince who is following the order to follow the countess. The maid answers that no, she just came to clean His Majesty's room. Giselle says, did the maid dare to enter the room without warning just to clean? The frightened maid says that the prince ordered to clean the room when the door to the room is opened, and the maid is not lying and asks the countess to believe. Only Giselle says that the maid is lying. Does the maid want the countess to tear out her tongue so that the maid will start telling the truth? Anna says a message to the countess. After Anna's words, the countess decides to leave the prince's room. Giselle also says that she remembered the maid's face. Renee looks at the maid and thinks that the poor maid once got to the countess, but it is necessary to wait until she leaves the room. Only the maid came to the bed and looked at the heroine. Frightened Renee is sure that the maid saw her. The maid begins an attempt to get the heroine out from under the bed. Renee looks at the maid and thinks that she did not come to the prince's room to clean herself. But a little later, the maid will reach the heroine. But at that time, Killian returned to the room and asked if the maid was busy now. The prince looks at the maid and says that he closed the door when he left. Only the maid answers that when she entered the room, the door was open. Killian says that he has had enough of empty talk. Let the maid leave the room. As soon as the maid left the room, the prince began to call Renee. As soon as the heroine came out, the prince began to ask if she was okay and if she was not injured. Killian thinks that before going to the ambassador, he checked that the door to the room was closed. The prince is sure that it was Countess Giselle who entered the room. When the heroine sees a scratch on the prince's hand, she kisses the wound as an apology. Renee also sees how the ring on the prince's finger begins to glow. Killian looks at the heroine and asks if the heroine wants to know more information about herself. When the maid left the prince's room, she went to the garden near the castle. The maid is walking in the garden and does not understand why the garden is so quiet. A magician appears behind the maid and asks how the girl got here. Doyson also says that he created a barrier where the wizard and his master could enter, but how was the maid able to enter the barrier? Doyson asked if the maid was looking for something here. The maid says that she was simply lost. That's why she ended up in the garden near the castle. Only the magician does not believe the words of the magician and says that maybe the girl was looking for a cat. The maid was shocked by this. The girl says in an uneasy voice that she does not know what the magician is talking about. Doyson says that the maid told the truth because the wizard's master does not like to waste time on idle talk. As soon as the maid sees the prince, she greets his majesty. The prince says that he has already seen the maid. She was looking for something in the room. Killian asks the maid's name, to which Iron answers. The prince asks Iron that she did not find the thing she was looking for in his room, but the maid says that she was just cleaning the prince's room. Killian says that Iron should not waste time. Let her tell the truth about what she is looking for here. Also, the prince approaches Irene and asks who the maid works for. Iron says that she is not a spy and she cannot tell anything. Killian touches the sword and says that probably Iron didn't understand. It wasn't just a request, it was an order. Renee sits in the prince's pocket and she hears that Irene will not confess and that the prince is very angry, and at this rate Killian will just kill the maid. When Iron does not want to admit his guilt, the prince begins to draw a sword. Renee decides that she cannot let the prince become a tyrant. Killian does not understand why Renee stopped the sword. Shocked, Doyson asks if the prince is carrying a cat with him, to which he receives the answer that it is so. So now there will be information about Renee. Doyson says that you can't do this so as not to catch the prince, but Killian says that Renee also wants to hear information about herself. When the maid saw the cat, she was calm and not even scared. Iron ran to the cat that was in the arms of the prince. Renee thought that Iron wanted to kill XX, but the maid starts crying and says that she is glad that her cat has remained alive until now. The maid remembers how she hid the cat in the garden near the castle. Iron also told the cat that if someone comes, let him hide, and if they want to take him, let him run away. After all the words, Iron went to work. The maid hoped that the cat would not run away. But when Iron came to the place where she left the cat, the maid could not find it. Then Iron thought that the cat had already been caught and killed. When Iron told all this to the prince, he says that the cat disappeared probably because the prince found it. Iron answers that it is probably so, but the maid is glad that the cat is alive. Iron could not even imagine that Renee lost her memory and was with Killian all the time. The maid thinks that Renee was very frightened because of her memory loss. Iron says that she is very grateful to the prince that he saved the cat. The maid does not even know how to thank his majesty. Killian asks whether Iron has a cat, and the maid replies that yes. Doyson was simply shocked by such an answer. The prince asks if there are any cats in the kingdom besides the maid and the heroine. Iron answers that there is not, after people said that cats are evil. At that moment, even wizards hunted cats, and by that time all cats were killed. Killian wonders whether Irene says that the prophecy that cats will destroy the kingdom. Iron says that after the incident in which cats were said to kill children and sacrifice to demons, cats began to be counted as demon animals. The heroine listens to this story and thinks that it is just a story, but it makes her sick. It seems that the heroine has already seen how cats were killed en masse, and from this comes sadness and a sense of guilt. When the prince sees that Renee is not well, he asks if the cat is okay. Iron wonders if the prince gave the cat a name. Killian answers yes, but now the prince is wondering what the cat's real name is. The maid says that she did not have time to name her child. When Killian asks why the maid says they are cursed, the prince asks the maid to tell more about the curse. Irene says that the meaning of the curse is that they turn into cats, and at night, when the red moon rises, they begin to get pregnant. This is all the punishment that the maid and the heroine must bear. The prince is interested in the punishment for what, but Irene does not know all the details of the curse. Doyson says that the red moon appears once in 70 years, and the last time it was 18 years ago in the year 511 of the royal calendar. Irene says that after 10 months she had a child, and that Irene is now 89 years old. Renee is shocked by such news and wonders why the maid looks so good for her age. Renee thinks that this all means that she will not age either and will get pregnant when there is a red moon. Irene says that Renee will become an adult in a year, and the maid has 1 year left to live on Earth. Irene says that she is born as humans live and grow up, but when a catman reaches 20 years old, they stop changing and live like that until 90 years old. Killian says that he understood everything how it works, but he wonders why Irene didn't give her child a name. Irene says that a very unpleasant situation happened. The prince does not understand what the maid wants to say. Irene says that they all look like people during the day, but as soon as they fall asleep, they turn into cats. But only on the heroine, it all works the other way around. Also, another curse is imposed on Renee. Irene says she wanted to give a name when she solved the curse problem, but Irene couldn't find any information about the curse. Killian asks if something like this has never happened. Irene answers that it has not. Irene says that nothing helped and that only the maid did not try, but there is one place where the necessary information is. Killian asks the maid to tell about this place. Only the maid is nervous because she revealed her daughter's secret and her crown to the prince. Then Renee touches her hand and asks the maid to tell. Irene asks Killian to allow and escort the maid to the royal library. Killian is surprised that the maid started talking about the royal library. But Irene understands that it is not easy to get into the library, but the most suitable place, in Irene's opinion, is the royal library, where the necessary information may be found. Killian asks the wizard if they can teleport to the library immediately. Because of this, Irene is simply shocked by the prince's behavior. Doyson says that he can move, but it will be a problem, but Killian says that the prince will solve all the problems. Irene is very grateful to the prince. Only Killian says that he does not need to thank him because the prince is doing all this because he wants to know the whole truth about the kingdom. The prince also asks what Irene's plan is, but the maid does not understand what plan the prince is talking about now. Killian thinks that if Renee found a real family, the prince will have to say goodbye from now on. Irene says that she has one request for the prince. Let the prince keep Renee with him until they reach the royal library. Killian does not understand why Irene made such a decision. Irene says that she is just a servant, so it will be difficult to hide Renee. Therefore, Irene says that Renee will feel safe with the prince, as she felt all this time. Killian accepts Irene's request and says that he will protect Renee. Killian also tells the wizard that they will be going to the library tomorrow morning. Irene is very grateful to the prince and does not even know how to thank His Majesty. Only the prince has already said that you don't need to thank him. Already at dinner, Renee looks at the prince's room and thinks that now she is in this room for the last time. The prince comes out of the bathroom and says that Renee is awake because she's waiting for him. Killian also offers Renee to sleep with him. When Renee was embarrassed, the prince says that the heroine will sleep in pajamas, don't worry. Killian and Renee are lying in bed. The prince asks if Renee is sleeping. Renee closes her eyes at the prince's question. Killian says that since he sleeps with Renee, he no longer has nightmares. Killian says that he is very glad that Renee appeared in his life. But Renee also thinks that she is very glad to have met the prince. Renee also does not want to say goodbye to Killian. Already in the morning, the prince is waiting for the magicians. When Doyson arrives, the prince says that the wizard is late, but the wizard apologizes because he had to bypass the guard. Harrod and Doyson ask if the prince took Renee with him. When the cat shows its paw, the wizard asks why the prince hides the cat when no one is around. Then the prince says all this because now Renee is very ashamed. When Erin arrives, the prince says that everyone has gathered. They can teleport to the royal library. Killian also says that it will all be very difficult. But a second later, Killian and everyone find themselves in the library. Killian wonders how security can be so weak where the royal family lives. Harrod says that the point is that there are many weak points in the defense of the castle. Killian says that all the information about cats should be found in all the searches. When everyone starts looking for information, Harrod says that even though the security system is weak, the royal family did a good job of hiding the documents. Doyson says that he does not feel a single magical book in the library. Renee jumps out of the prince's pocket and wonders how big the library is and how long it would take to look at every book. Irene does not know which book can help and takes the book about the great kingdom of Upert. When Doyson noticed what book she had taken, the maid said that the wizard felt magical energy in the book. Killian approaches Erin and says that this book is not special. It is a book about prophecies. The prince also prophesies that the thief who stole the soul must give his own and spend 8 days in darkness and 9 nights. When Irene hears the prophecy, she says that they have all been looking for this book for so long. Erin also says that her mother once said that Irene is the 8th child, and if this is the prophecy that the maid is thinking about, the 9th child is Renee. Renee does not believe in prophecies and decides to look in a book. As soon as Renee touches the book starts to glow. Renee dragged into the book, and the voice from the book says that all the power is in this book, because in the future, the creator wanted to tell everything to the 9th child. The creator of the book says that they were waiting for Renee, who should save the kingdom. But it was once said that cats destroy the kingdom, but in addition to this, the creator of the book also had a curse. All this is evidence why Renee, the child of the night, the creator also asks that the heroine find the prophecy that the creator wounded. Also, the creator says that Renee protects God's blessing, so the creator hopes that Renee will find a fake prophecy and get rid of the curse. When Renee woke up, the prince was very happy that everything was fine with Renee. The wizard says that the prince passed out with Renee and what this could all mean. Killian says that the author of the book put all his strength into the book. Harid says that only high priests can do this. Killian wonders what kind of priest could transfer his power into a book. A forged prophecy scroll was destroyed a week after its creation, and the priest who protected the scroll is Farbin Neelis. Renee thinks that Farbin is probably the creator of the book. Killian decides that they will all find the heir of Farbin Neelis. And it does not matter who this heir is or where he is now. The only thing that matters is that the prince will find him no matter what. 5 days have passed since Killian wanted to find the priest's heir. The prince thinks that thanks to the wizard they found the heir quickly. But Renee is not at all happy with such news. Killian says that it is very dangerous outside, so it is better to change into a rabbit. Only Renee thinks that now she is simply being bullied. When the prince came to the heir's house, Killian asked if the wizard was sure that the heir lived here. Doyson says yes, but the prince mentions that the heir is only 16 years old, but the house smells strongly of alcohol. As soon as Harid opens the door, the magician hears loud screams. One of the men abandons the heir and says that he is just lazy, but the guy says that the man should pay for the work. Killian asks if there are heiresses. The boy Harid answers that the only heiress of the priest is Sanya Neelis. There are no others. The man says that Sanya is a pitiful little boy who only wants to take money from other people, but Sanya says that the man himself promised to pay for the work. After such words, the man waves his hand at the boy. The prince stopped the man and said that he would pay 10 times more. Killian also says that if a man can beat a boy for money, then the man does not mind if the prince pays, but breaks the man's neck for it. Killian simply throws the man to the ground. Also, the prince looks at the man and says, if he dares to hit someone even once, then the prince will make the man look for his own head on the floor. After the threats, the prince treated Sanya to a delicious meal. Prin watches the boy eat and says that Sanya can take his time and eat slowly. Sanya says that this is not his real name. Let the prince call the boy Jack. Renee looks at the boy from the prince's pocket, and at this time Killian asks the boy if Sanya came up with the name Jack himself. Sanya says that he came up with the name himself. Isn't it a big problem? The boy also says that he is very grateful to the prince for his help and food. But Sanya never makes contracts that help only one person. So Sanya is willing to help the prince. Let Killian just say what he really wants. Harid asks the boy what Sanya knows about the child, in which day and night are confused. Sanya does not understand what the magician means and says that the child sleeps during the day and walks at night because he cannot sleep. Harid asks the guy if he has any family heirlooms or at least some personal stories. Only Sanya answers that he doesn't know anything. Harid tells his master that the boy knows absolutely nothing. The prince stands up at the table and tells Harid to erase Sanya's memories and for Doyson to find the other heirs of the priest. Killian also tells the boy not to worry. He will be well paid to live in comfort because his family sacrificed themselves for the kingdom. Sanya says that he does not want money. He only said that he accepts fair contracts. The guy also shouts who gave Killian the right to erase the memories of strangers, who is Killian anyway. Renee thinks that if the boy did not inherit anything, then there can be no more fairy tales. Sanya shouts what importance does the Sanya family have to the Killian family, and the Sanya family has long since been forgotten by everyone. Renee thinks that she is somehow related to the boy, so she leaves the prince's pocket. Sanya was frightened when he realized that a cat was running at him. Renee thinks that the boy's blood alone can help and bites him on the cheek. After Renee bit the boy's cheek and drank some blood, Renee turned into a human. When Sanya saw that the cat turned into a person, he was simply shocked. Killian hugged Renee and ordered the heroine not to come close to the boy. When the prince was putting a jacket on Renee at this time, Sanya began to shout that he could not believe that the cat had turned into a person. The guy is just in a panic. He doesn't know how to explain it all and why everyone around is so calm. Harid soothes the boy with charms. Doyson is interested in how the heroine even thought of such a thing. Renee answers that the only thing that cannot be broken or stolen is the people themselves. The sorcerer realized that the priest had given the answer through his heir. Sanya looks at the girl and asks if it is true that the cat turned into a girl thanks to Sanya. In this case, the guy says that the girl should reward him handsomely. Only Killian looks at the boy and tells him to shut his mouth. Killian asks Renee why the cat bit the boy's cheek. Renee answers that she first saw it on the cheek and decided to try it. The prince takes a cup of tea and asks why Renee talks to him so formally. Then Renee answers that now she is a person, so she should treat the prince's crown well. Only the conversation is interrupted by loud screams from the room where Harid and Sanya were locked.